So, again, referring to Leon Hurvitz's preface to his translation of the Lotus Sutra, called The Lotus Blossom of the Fine Dharma, he describes chapter 24 in the Lotus Sutra thusly: the Bodhisattva Gautama comes out of his own world to salute both Buddhas, and the Buddha tells his listeners about the deeds of this Bodhisattva in a previous incarnation. Reeves actually translates this Bodhisattva's name as Wonderful Sound, and the reference to saluting both Buddhas is relative to the Buddha Sakyamuni and the Buddha Abundant Treasures, who are still, within the context of the story of the Lotus Sutra, sitting next to each other inside the treasure stupa of abundant treasures, with the great assembly surrounding them. And relative to what the deeds are of this Bodhisattva, Wonderful Sound, he can basically change his form into various forms. Why? In order to preach the Dharma. In other words, some people need to hear the Dharma, specifically the Lotus Sutra, from a man or a woman or a teacher or a neighbor or a friend or an official, and so on and so forth. So here we get this notion of this Bodhisattva's power, if you will, to transform himself, to accommodate through what would be considered to be skillful means to the needs of the hearer, so that the person receiving the preaching can in fact hear the Dharma and receive it with a faithful mind. And then going on into the really all-important, in many ways, chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra, Hurvitz says, the Buddha tells his listeners about the efficacy of invoking Avalokiteśvara. And of course, Avalokiteśvara is the regarder of the cries of the world. And this chapter is the first time, as I understand it, within the canon of the Mahayana Buddhism, that we hear about this wonderful Bodhisattva who basically serves as a source of compassionate support and comfort for living beings, no matter what their condition or circumstance of distress. So no matter what the circumstance, and again, all the various circumstances of distress are described in this 25th chapter, if a person simply, focuses his or her thoughts on Avalokiteśvara and invokes his name, requests his assistance, essentially with a mind of faith that Avalokiteśvara will be there to resolve the problem that the person is facing. So this is a manifestation of this Bodhisattva's sublime and supreme and infinite compassion, one of the two key attributes of the cosmic Buddha. And Avalokiteśvara is the ultimate symbol or representation of this compassion. And again, he, like Wonderful Sound, can change into various forms and present himself in an infinite number of ways to the person in distress. He or she can benefit from calling upon this wonderful cosmic Bodhisattva. Now, again, Avalokiteśvara means regarder of the cries of the world, and over the course of time, as the Mahayana texts were translated over into Chinese and became a part of the Chinese culture, this particular Bodhisattva evolved in a basic way, such that his primary modality of presentation, if you will, became female rather than male. And in China, he's called Guanyin or Guanyin. It's simply Chinese for the phrase regarder of the cries of the world. Then in Japan, he was called Kannon, or she was called Kannon. The point being, this Bodhisattva became one of the most famous and revered Bodhisattvas within the Mahayana Buddhist pantheon over the course of the hundreds of years that Buddhism has thrived, and even up until the present. Very often Guanyin is referred to as the goddess of the East, and in some ways has been compared in a parallel form to the Virgin Mary. And, if you think about it, in many ways it may be a bit sexist, but that, people in distress may, in general, have more of a tendency to want to rely upon a female figure and call upon a female figure for assistance or help, more so than a male. So again, this is a wonderful, wonderful figure within Buddhism, and taking it back a step, that Guanyin is considered to be an emanation of Amitābha Buddha. Amitābha Buddha being the primary Buddha within Pure Land Buddhism. And so if Amitā's key attributes are wisdom and compassion, Guanyin or Avalokiteśvara is the emanation from Amitābha of that aspect of Amitābha, which represents infinite compassion. Also in the Rego paintings, so-called, the ones where you see Amitābha coming down from the mountains or coming down from the sky with a retinue of musicians and bodhisattvas and so forth to greet the dying person, it's actually Guanyin who flanks his left side, who is the one who carries the lotus blossom that is placed near the dying person, onto which the dying person is reborn and transported back to the Pure Land. Now that was an earlier form of Pure Land Buddhism, and as Shinran refined the teaching into true Pure Land Buddhism, the Rego paintings weren't revered to the same degree, because the whole focus was on the name, Namomita Boots, the Nembutsu, in terms of the form of painting or art that was most revered. But certainly as a Shin Buddhist, I continue to gain great joy and pleasure and sense of peace from viewing these Rego paintings with Guanyin offering the lotus blossom to the dying person. Namomita Boots, Namomita Boots, Namomita Boots.